Section 7 of The Destination of Man, by Johann Gottlieb Fichte, translated by Jane Sinnett. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 7. Knowledge. The World Without.
The character I, read by Kevin S.
Spirit, read by Larry Wilson.
Go on boldly. I have not only not interrupted thee, but have even assisted in the development of these inferences. Now, however, I find it in earnest necessary to retract my position, that by means of the law of causality I attain the knowledge of the existence of external things. I could by this means become conscious only of a force out of myself, in the same manner as for the explanation of magnetic phenomena I suppose a magnetic, or for the explanation of electrical phenomena an electrical, force in nature. The world without me appears by no means as a mere force. It is something extended, solid, sensible, not like a mere force with its various manifestations. It does not merely produce effects, it has properties. In the apprehension of it, I am inwardly conscious of something quite different from mere thought. This appears to me as perception, although it has been proved that it cannot be such, and it will be difficult for me to describe the kind of consciousness that I seem to have of it, and to separate it from those other kinds of which we have spoken.
Thou must nevertheless make the attempt, or we shall not come to a clear understanding.
I will endeavor to open a way towards it. I beseech thee, if thy organs of sight resemble mine, to fix thine eye on yonder object, and, forgetting thy previous reasoning, to tell me candidly what is your impression produced in thee. Dost thou not look over and perceive at a single glance a surface? And hast thou the most distant or obscure conception of that operation of extending a red point to a line, and a line to a surface of which thou hast spoken? It is an afterthought to divide this surface into lines and points. Would not every unprejudiced observer say and insist that he really saw a surface? I say saw.
I am ready to concede all, and find that my self-observation corresponds exactly with thine. Thou must not, however, forget that it is not our design to relate to one another whatever takes place in consciousness, as in a journal of the human mind, but to consider its various phenomena in their connection, and to explain and deduce one from another; and that, consequently, no one of thine observations, which cannot certainly be denied, but which we would fain have explained, can overturn any one of my correct inferences. Do not, therefore, in considering the resemblance of this kind of consciousness of bodies out of thyself to real perception, overlook the great difference which nevertheless exists between them.
I was about to remark on this difference. Each indeed appears as an immediate, and not as an acquired consciousness, but sensation is consciousness of my own state. The consciousness of the object appears to have no relation to myself. I know that it is, and that is all. It does not concern me further. If in the first instance I seem like soft clay on which now this, now that impression is made, in the other I am like a mirror over which the forms of objects pass, without occasioning the slightest change in it. This difference, however, is in favor of my argument. I seem to have a real independent consciousness of external existences entirely different from sensation or a consciousness of the various states of my own being.
This is well observed, but be not too hasty. If we have been correct in our former conclusion that thou canst have immediate consciousness only of thyself, if the consciousness now in question is neither of action nor of suffering, may it not be hitherto unrecognized consciousness of thine own existence, of thy existence inasmuch as thou art a knowing or intelligent being?
I do not understand thee, but help me, for I wish to do so.
I must then claim thy whole attention, for I am obliged to go deeper than we have hitherto gone into this matter, and to seek far for the answer to thy question, What art thou?
To answer this question in the most general manner, I must say I am I. myself.
I am content with the answer. What is involved in this idea of I, and how dost thou attain it?
I can only make myself understood by opposition. An external existence, a thing, is something out of me, the intelligent being cognizant of it. Concerning it there arises the question: since the thing cannot know of itself, how can a knowledge of it arise? And since all its modifications lie in the circle of its own existence, and by no means in mine, how can a consciousness of it arise in me? How does the thing affect me? What is the tie between me, the subject, and the thing which is the object of my knowledge? Of what I am, I know no more than that I am. But here no tie is necessary between subject and object. My own being is this tie. I am at once the subject knowing and the object known of, and this reflection or return of the knowledge on itself is what I designate by the term I, if I have any determinate meaning.
Therefore it is in the identity of both subject and object that thine existence as an intelligent being consists?
It is so.
Canst thou then comprehend this identity, which is neither subject nor object, but lies at the foundation of both?
By no means. It is the condition of all my knowledge that the conscious being and what he is conscious of appears as separate. I cannot even conceive any other kind of consciousness. In recognizing my own existence, I see myself as subject and object, which, however, are immediately connected.
Canst thou be conscious of the moment in which this incomprehensible one divided itself thus?
How can I, since my consciousness only becomes possible by means of this separation, since it is my consciousness itself that thus separates?
Of this separation, then, thou becomest immediately conscious, in becoming conscious of thyself. This, then, should be thine actual, original existence.
So it is.
And on what, then, is this separation based?
I am an intelligence and have consciousness in myself. This separation is the condition and result of this consciousness. It has its basis, therefore, in myself.
Thou art an intelligence, and as such thou art to thyself an object of knowledge. Thine objective knowledge presents itself, therefore, to thy subjective knowledge, and hovers before it, although without any consciousness on thy part of such a presentation. Is this what thou wouldst say? Or canst thou bring forward some more exact characteristics of subject and object as they appear in consciousness?
The subjective contains within itself the basis of consciousness according to its form, but by no means according to its matter. That a consciousness, an inward power of conception and contemplation, should exist, depends on the subject, but that this or that is conceived or contemplated depends on the object. The objective contains the basis of its existence within itself. The subjective appears as the still and passive mirror, before which the objective floats. That the first should reflect images belongs to its own nature. That this or that is reflected depends on the object.
The subjective, then, is precisely so constituted as thou hast described the consciousness of objects out of thyself to be.
It is so, and this agreement is very remarkable. I begin half to believe that out of the internal laws of my own consciousness may proceed even the conception of an existence out of myself and independent of any act of mine, and the basis of this conception may be nothing more than these laws themselves.
And why only half believe?
Because I do not yet see why it should produce precisely this conception of a solid extended mass occupying a certain portion of space.
Thou hast nevertheless seen above that it is no more than thine own sensation which thou extendest through space, and thou hast imagined the possibility that it may be exactly by this extension in space that it becomes transformed to thee into something sensible. For the present, we have only to explain the manner in which this conception of space arises. Let us then make the attempt. I know that thou canst not become conscious of thy intelligent activity as such until it passes through some change of state. If thou shouldst attempt to represent it to thyself whilst performing this function, passing from one state to another, how would it appear to thee?
My spiritual faculty appears as if moving from one point to another, as if drawing a line. A positive thought makes a point in this line.
And why as if drawing a line?
I cannot answer this, or state the cause of it, without passing the limits of my own existence. I can only say it is so.
Thus then appears to thee a particular act of thy consciousness. How then appears not thy self-produced, but thy inherited or acquired knowledge, from which all particular thought is only the renewal or further modification? Under what image does this appear?
Evidently as something in which one can draw lines and make points in all directions, namely as space.
Now then it will be clear to thee that what proceeds from thine own mind may nevertheless appear to thee as an existence out of thyself, nay, must necessarily appear so. Thou hast penetrated to the true source of thy conceptions of things out of thyself. This is not perception, for thou perceivest only thine own state. It is not thought, for things do not appear to thee as the product of thought. It is really and in fact an absolute and immediate consciousness of an existence out of thyself, just as perception is an immediate consciousness of thine own state. Do not be deceived by sophists and half-philosophers. Things do not appear to thee by means of any representatives. Of the thing that exists and that can exist, thou art conscious immediately. Thou thyself art that of which thou art conscious. By a fundamental law of thy being, thou art thus presented to thyself and thrown out of thyself. In all consciousness I contemplate myself, and the objective, that which is contemplated, is also myself, the same I which contemplates, presented objectively. I see and am the conscious being, see my own visual sensation, and am also that of which I am conscious. For this reason is the object transparent to thy mind's eye, because it is thy mind itself. I divide, limit, determine the possible forms of things, and the relations of these forms previous to all perception. And no wonder, for I divide, limit, and determine only my own knowledge. Thus does a knowledge of things become possible. It is not in them, and cannot proceed out of them. It proceeds from thee, and from a law of thine own nature. There is no external sense, for there is no external perception. There is, however, an external contemplation, not of the object, but of a knowledge, not subjective, but presented to, hovering before the subject. Through the means of this external contemplation are perception and sense regarded as external. I see or feel a surface, but I contemplate my sight or vision of a surface. Space, penetrable, transparent, illuminated, the purest image of my knowledge, is not seen, but contemplated in the mind, and in it is my own vision contemplated. The light is not out of, but in me, and I am the light. Thou hast formerly replied to my question, How dost thou know that thou seest and hearest? By saying that thou hast an immediate knowledge or consciousness of these sensations. Now perhaps thou wilt better be able to explain this immediate consciousness of sensation.
It must be a twofold consciousness. Sensation is itself an immediate consciousness, for I am sensible of my own sensation, but from this arises no knowledge of external existence, for I am sensible only of my own state. I am, however, originally not merely a sensitive, but also a contemplative being, not merely an active, but also an intelligent one. I contemplate my sensation, and there arises from myself and my own nature a knowledge, a cognition of an existence. Sensation becomes transformed into a capability of sensation, the various affections of my senses, as red, smooth, and so forth, into a something red and smooth, out of myself, whose existence I contemplate as in space, because the contemplation itself is space. Thus does it become clear why I believe I see or feel surfaces, which in fact I neither see nor feel, but I contemplate my own sensation of sight or touch as that of a surface.
Thou hast well understood me, or rather thyself. Section 7.